A gentle breeze drifted across the quiet grounds of Shady Pines Estate, carrying with it the faint melody of a lullaby. Inside one of the grand rooms, a mother cradled her precious infant close to her chest, singing in a voice as soft as silk, a voice capable of comforting the child, or one day destroying the very life she cherished. Her song was an old nursery rhyme, timeless and tender. My mother, who sat and watched my infant head, when sleeping on my cradle bed, and tears of love and fear would shed, lest I should die, my mother. The baby's tiny eyes slowly fluttered shut, lulled into peaceful sleep by the familiar melody. Outside, the wind continued to whisper through the towering trees, as though the estate itself remembered stories no one else dared to tell. It was the year 2000. Shady Pines was an affluent neighborhood where success was measured by the manicured perfection of one's lawn, the brand of one's car, and the prestige of one's children. Two houses stood side by side on Elm Lane, sharing a boundary wall of ivy and concrete, yet representing two entirely different kingdoms. In the first house lived Mrs. Frida Garner, who had been separated from her husband for the past 4 years. Frida was a woman defined by flash. She was a senior executive at a multinational marketing firm, a position that afforded her a lifestyle of sharp designer suits, gold jewelry that clinked like wind chimes, and a brand new Mercedes parked in the driveway. To Frida, appearance wasn't just everything, it was the only thing. And her masterpiece was her 14-year-old daughter, Hailey. Hailey was the center of Frida's universe, treated less like a child and more like an extension of Frida's brand. Whatever Hailey wanted, Hailey received. She wore crop tops to the mall, carried expensive leather handbags to her private high school, and possessed a smartphone when most of her peers were still using landlines. She's an individual, Jenny, Frida scoffed, sipping white wine on her patio while Hailey blasted pop music from her bedroom upstairs. I refuse to cage her spirit. She needs to express herself. Jenny was her neighbor and colleague. The second house belonged to Jenny Micano. Jenny worked at the very same marketing firm, occupying an office just down the hall from Frida's. But where Frida was loud and transactional, Jenny was a quiet force. She was a deeply committed, born-again Christian. Jenny was also wealthy. Her husband had left behind a sprawling estate and a lucrative investment portfolio before his passing, but her wealth was wrapped in modesty. She wore beautifully tailored, understated linen dresses, drove a reliable, spotless Volvo, and spent her weekends volunteering at the local church. Jenny had 2 children, Carter, a disciplined 16-year-old boy who spent his afternoons playing basketball and reading, and Queen, a brilliant 14-year-old girl who shared a classroom with Hailey at the prestigious Oak Ridge Academy. Queen was the antithesis of Hailey. While Hailey spent her class periods applying lip gloss and texting older boys from the public high school down the road, Queen sat in the front row, her notebook filled with meticulous biological diagrams. She wore her school uniform exactly as prescribed, skirt hitting below the knee, white socks pulled straight. Despite their proximity, living next door, working at the same firm, attending the same church every Sunday, and sending their daughters to the same school, the gap between Frida and Jenny was an unbridgeable chasm. They shared the same street, the same routines, and even many of the same acquaintances, yet they could not have been more different. Frida believed children should discover themselves without boundaries. Rules, in her opinion, stifled creativity and independence. Jenny believed love required guidance, discipline, and godly instruction. To her, freedom without responsibility was simply another path to ruin. Their daughters grew up side by side, but under completely different philosophies. One household celebrated unrestricted self-expression, the other valued character above convenience. Neighbors often whispered that it was only a matter of time before those opposing worlds collided. That time came on a humid Friday evening. The air hung heavy over Shady Pines Estate as dark clouds gathered above the quiet neighborhood. Doors and windows stood open to welcome the evening breeze, allowing voices to drift easily from one compound to another. What began as an ordinary evening would soon ignite years of simmering tension between the two households, changing the lives of everyone on the street forever. It was a Friday evening. Jenny had been in her prayer closet for nearly an hour. As she knelt beside the worn wooden chair that served as her prayer altar, a heavy burden settled upon her spirit. It was neither fear nor anxiety, it was the unmistakable prompting she had learned, through years of walking with God, never to ignore. Her whispered prayers gradually faded into silence. Then it came. A deep, unsettling urgency gripped her heart. Without warning, the face of young Haley appeared vividly before her closed eyes. Jenny could see the girl's bright smile, her carefree laughter, and the confidence with which she carried herself. But just as quickly, the image darkened. The smile vanished, replaced by a look of confusion and vulnerability. Jenny's heartbeat quickened. "Lord?" she whispered. The impression grew stronger. She sensed danger, not the kind announced by sirens or shouting, but the quiet danger that often disguised itself as friendship, excitement, and acceptance. A chilling awareness filled her spirit concerning the company Haley had been keeping. Almost instantly, another image formed in her mind. A group of older boys. They were the same boys who frequently gathered at the edge of the neighborhood park, leaning carelessly against their motorcycles, laughing loudly as they watched people pass by. They always appeared harmless at first glance, yet something about them had never allowed Jenny's heart to rest. The burden became almost unbearable. She could not explain it logically, but everything within her warned that Haley was drifting toward a decision that could alter the course of her young life. Jenny opened her eyes and slowly rose to her feet. Her knees trembled from both prayer and the weight of what she had sensed. She knew better than to dismiss such impressions. Too many times in the past, ignoring the Holy Spirit's prompting had nearly cost someone dearly. Walking to the window, she looked toward the neighboring house. The music was playing again. Somewhere inside, Haley was laughing. Jenny closed her eyes once more. "Father," she prayed softly, "if this warning is from you, please protect that child. Don't let her take a step she cannot retrace. Give me wisdom to know what to do, and give Frida a heart willing to listen before it's too late." A quiet peace settled over her, but the burden did not lift. She knew this was not the end of the matter. It was only the beginning. Days later, unable to shake the burden from her heart, Jenny walked across the narrow driveway that separated the two houses and knocked on Frida's door. Through the large French windows of Frida's living room, she could see Haley sitting on the leather sofa, laughing as she typed furiously on her phone. Frida was at the wet bar, pouring herself a drink. Jenny knocked gently. Frida opened the door, a patronizing smile on her perfectly painted lips. "Jenny, to what do I owe the pleasure? Don't tell me the firm is calling an emergency meeting on a Friday night," Frida chuckled, her heavy gold bracelets clattering. "No, Frida. This isn't about work," Jenny said softly, her voice steady but carrying an underlying gravity. "May I step inside for a moment? It's about Haley." Frida's smile faltered slightly, replaced by a defensive tilt of her chin. "Haley? What about her?" She stepped back, allowing Jenny into the foyer. Haley didn't look up from her phone, though her thumbs slowed down. "Frida, I'll speak plainly because we are neighbors, and we raise our children in the same environment," Jenny began, looking directly at Frida, then glancing briefly at Haley. "This afternoon, after school, I saw Haley behind the sports complex. She was with those older boys from the technical college. The ones who hang around the tracks." Haley stiffened on the couch, but kept her eyes glued to her screen. "And?" Frida crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing. "They are just friends, Jenny. Hailey is very popular. She has friends from all walks of life. I don't believe in sheltering her from the real world. It's not about sheltering her, Frida, it's about protecting her, Jenny pleaded, her tone filled with genuine maternal anxiety. God laid it heavily on my heart to come to you tonight. There is a danger here. Early exposure to these kinds of relationships, to boys who do not have her best interests at heart, it leads down a dark road. It opens doors to early sexual activity, to emotional ruin, and things far worse. She is only 14. She needs boundaries. She needs her mother to tell her no. Frida's face flushed a deep, angry crimson. The passive-aggressive neighborly facade shattered instantly. How dare you? Frida hissed, stepping into Jenny's personal space. How dare you come into my home and preach your archaic, superstitious nonsense to me? Keep your God out of my daughter's business. Frida, please, I am speaking to you as a mother. No, you are speaking to me as a self-righteous, judgmental fanatic. Frida shouted, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. Hailey looked up now, a smirk playing on her lips as she watched her mother defend her lifestyle. Frida pointed a manicured finger toward the front door. You think because your daughter Queen dresses like a nun, and has no social life, that you're a better mother. You're suffocating that girl. Meanwhile, my Hailey is beautiful, confident, and free. She doesn't need your prayers, and she certainly doesn't need your warnings. Get out of my house, Jenny. Go back to your prayer closet and leave my family alone. I'm not here to quarrel with you. Remember, the choices we make in our youth can either make or mar our marital destiny. You told me your story, and you know mine. We both agreed that we could have made better choices when it came to our life partners. Please don't let your daughter repeat our mistakes. Those were our choices. Let them make their own without trying to control them. Jenny looked at Frida, seeing the fierce, blinding pride in her eyes. Then she looked at Hailey, whose smirk had turned into a cold stare of triumph. I will pray for her regardless, Frida, Jenny said quietly. Because the seeds we sow today are the harvest we must reap tomorrow. With that, Jenny turned and walked out into the cool night air, leaving behind a house filled with defensive anger and unbridled indulgence. 24 years later. Time is a relentless river. It erodes the grandest facades and exposes the foundations of every structure we build. 24 years passed over Shady Pines. The year was now 2024. The neighborhood had grown older, wealthier, and more secluded. The trees on Elm Lane were massive now, casting long, dramatic shadows over the houses below. In the house of Jenny Micano, the harvest was beautiful. Queen had fulfilled every ounce of her early potential. Now 38 years old, she was a dedicated and brilliant medical doctor, currently completing a demanding residency at the local teaching hospital. She was known for her calm demeanor, sharp intellect, and unwavering faith. Her brother, Carter, was a successful corporate attorney living in the capital, who visited their mother frequently. Jenny, now retired from the marketing firm, spent her days organizing community health drives and tending to her roses. Her face bore the gentle, graceful marks of a life lived in peace and purpose. There was, however, one issue that everyone seemed to notice. Queen was still unmarried. Suitors had come and gone over the years, but none had become her husband. As the years passed, the visits became fewer until they stopped altogether. At 38, no man was pursuing her, and the silence surrounding her love life had become impossible to ignore. In the house of Frida, the harvest was complicated. On the surface, Frida's pride seemed justified. Hailey had become a massive success in the fashion world. She was a prominent fashion designer, the founder of Hailey Garner Designs. Her clothing line was featured in magazines, her social media following was in the millions, and she split her time between Shady Pines and high-fashion hubs. Frida, now an elderly woman who refused to let her hair go grey, bragged about Hailey to anyone who would listen at the country club. But behind the velvet curtains of the Garner household, the foundation was rotting. The culture of indulgence that Frida had fostered had grown into a monster. Hailey, now a beautiful but fiercely unstable woman, had spent her 20s and 30s chasing high-octane thrills to fill a void that luxury could not satisfy. Then, the scandal broke. It began as a whisper in elite circles, but within days, it exploded onto the internet. A bitter ex-lover, a man associated with the shady underbelly of the entertainment world, had leaked explicit, nude photographs and highly compromising videos of Hailey. Worse yet, it was revealed that Hailey had been paying him millions of dollars in blackmail for over a year to keep the footage hidden. When her funds ran low due to a failing production line, the blackmailer unleashed the files. The fallout was catastrophic. Major retailers pulled Hailey Garner designs from their shelves overnight. The stock of her parent company plummeted. The flashy world Frida had built around her daughter came crashing down under the weight of public mockery and tabloid headlines. Frida spent her days frantic, screaming into her phone at public relations managers, lawyers, and crisis consultants. Hailey Garner locked herself in her room, refusing to see anyone, drinking heavily to numb the public humiliation. It was during this storm of scandal that a moving truck pulled into the vacant estate across the street. The estate across the street was the largest in Shady Pines, a magnificent colonial mansion that had stood empty for 2 years. Its new occupants were Everett Waziri and his elderly mother, Evelyn Waziri. Everett was a 39-year-old real estate mogul. He was exceptionally wealthy, but like Jenny's family, his wealth was a quiet background note to his character. Everett was a devout Christian, a man of deep integrity, who had spent his youth building a business empire based on ethical practices. After his father's passing, he had purchased this estate to provide his aging mother with a serene, peaceful environment to live out her golden years. Within 48 hours of their arrival, the neighborhood gossip mill was in full swing. The local residents, eager to welcome a wealthy young bachelor and his mother, organized a small neighborhood association greeting. But more than welcoming them, the neighbors were eager to unload the fresh, juicy scandal of Elm Lane. Mrs. Nuefa, a long-time resident who lived at the corner of the street, sat with Evelyn Waziri on the new porch furniture, while Everett helped the domestic staff unpack the heavy oak bookshelves in the study. "Oh, Evelyn, it's a lovely neighborhood, truly it is," Mrs. Nuefa whispered, leaning in, her eyes wide with theatrical secrecy. "But you must be careful who you associate with. Right across the street, the Garner family. It's a total disaster." Evelyn, a gentle woman with silver hair and a kind face, frowned slightly. "A disaster? What do you mean?" "The daughter, Hailey. You must have seen it on the news. Nude photographs, blackmail, drugs, God knows what else. Her mother, Frida, has spent her whole life acting like they were royalty. Now look at them. The girl is completely ruined. A fallen woman." Everett stepped out onto the porch, carrying a tray of lemonade his mother had prepared. He had caught the last few sentences. His face remained calm, but his brow furrowed with mild distaste for the gossip. "Mrs. Nuefa," Everett said smoothly, handing her a glass. "We prefer not to judge people based on what the media or the streets say. Everyone has struggles." "Oh, Everett, you're a good Christian man, I can tell," Mrs. Nuefa scoffed lightly, waving her hand. "But this isn't just a struggle, it's a moral collapse. Frida came over here yesterday morning. She saw your moving truck. She was practically in a hurry, trying to figure out how to introduce Hailey to you before the scandal completely drowned them. She wants a wealthy man to save her daughter from this mess." It was true. Yesterday, Frida had spotted Everett in the driveway. Sensing an opportunity to counter the scandal by aligning her daughter with a wealthy, handsome newcomer, Frida had attempted to orchestrate an introduction. She had dressed Haley in an elegant tailored dress, applied heavy makeup to hide the dark circles under her daughter's eyes, and walked across the street under the guise of a welcome to the neighborhood visit.